Test, test. Good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It is my particular pleasure to welcome all of you at our 2 days event from Vision to Practice for a Just Transition for All. And thank you for being with us that early in the morning. Special thanks for your very active input yesterday, and today we'll probably continue in the same vein with the new policy dialogue. The topic for today's discussions is financial mechanisms and operating the ILO's Just Transition guidelines in the energy sector, implementing the NDCs to promote sustainable enterprises and decent work for all. So for our opening remarks, we have a distinguished panel of 3 speakers. Ms. Raya Weiss-Kjelgaard, Mr. Elmar Yarov, the representative of Azerbaijan's presidency for COP29, His Excellency Ambassador Manuel Adalberto Carlos Montenegro Lopez de la Cruz, Ambassador of Brazil to the Republic of Azerbaijan, and Brazil is going to be the host of the next COP, so would like to ask our distinguished panelists to take their floor. And before we give the floor to the panelists, would like to get online connection with our first keynote speaker, Ms. Ria Weiss-Kjelgaard, ILO Enterprises Director, Department Director, Page Board Member. So let's give the floor to Ms. Ria Weiss-Kjelgaard. Well, some technical issues, ladies and gentlemen. Since we need to get connection, I'd like to apply once again to Ms. Ria Weiss-Kjelgaard, the Director of ILO Enterprises Department and Page Board Member. We already had a pleasure of Ms. Ria's company yesterday, so today we seem to have get everything online. Yeah.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Moderator. I hope you can hear me.
Now you're with us, Ms. Weiss-Kjelgaard. You're with us. We're all ears, so the floor is yours.
Good morning, and thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. So good morning to all of you. Good morning to all the distinguished participants and delegates. On behalf of the UN Partnership for the for Action on Green Economy, PAID, so that means UNITAR, UNIDO, UNEP, UNDP, and the ILO, it is my pleasure to say good morning to you and welcome you to the second day of our cross-regional South-South policy dialogue on, as you said, Mr. Moderator, from vision to action. I also want to use this particular opportunity to thank all the many development and funding partners that are supporting PAID and actually allowing us to exist. It is thanks to them and their support that we are able to provide our technical assistance to the many countries where we are asked to support. So I want to build on what we discussed and heard extensively yesterday and now move into the issue of what's the focus for today. And that is indeed the financing of how do we get from the vision to the practice. And we know that without a discussion on financing of our climate plans, without discussions on how we finance the national determined contributions, they do remain just that, plans, and finance is therefore at the core of any vision that needs to be implemented. So we really welcome not least the fact that we have from different regions experiences that you are willing to share with us, because how you have done that in different economic and social settings is crucial for all of us to learn from and to be inspired by when we need to advance this agenda vision to practice on just transition for all even further. So I want to thank in advance all the distinguished speakers in the coming sessions throughout the day for not only their willingness to share, but also their frankness in sharing with us lessons learned from their actual financing mechanisms. What is possible? How did you make it work? And I really hope that this will be useful to all participants. In PAID, we consider South-South cooperation and sharing of experience and knowledge at the core of our work. So we hope very much that this will also be useful to all of you. So let me finish here, and again, on behalf of PAID, thank all of you for being here, for the discussion, and for your engagement throughout the day. And I want to reiterate what I said yesterday, that PAID is at your disposal, together with the rest of the UN, obviously, in whatever journey you want to pursue in implementing the nationally determined contributions. So with that, Mr. Moderator, thank you very much, and wishing everyone a wonderful day, fruitful and wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vice Kjelgaard. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to give the floor to the keynote speakers that share our audience today. So I'm pleased to hereby give the floor to Mr. Elmar Mamediyarov, the representative of COP29 presidency from Azerbaijan. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and on behalf of COP29 presidency, I would like also to greet all participants and also to express my thanks to ILO for inviting us to deliver this speech. Also, I would like particularly thank ILO for excellent cooperation during last several months. We had very important initiative successfully launched, Baku Initiative on Human Development for Climate Resilience, and ILO was one of the key partners of COP29 presidency. At the same time, we adopted Baku guiding principles on human development for climate resilience. Also, on the first thematic day, Finance, Investment and Trade Day, COP29 presidency launched a successfully important initiative, Baku Initiative for Climate Finance, Investment and Trade Dialogue, Big Fit Dialogue. And within the Big Fit Dialogue also we are tackling just transition issues, which is important, bringing together multilateral development banks, multilateral climate funds, also countries, international organizations, UN agencies, to address all important issues and facilitate green and just transition for all countries, and particularly for developing countries. Also, I would like to inform you that yesterday COP29 presidency organized Urbanization Day, first ever Tourism Day, and also Transport Day. And within Urbanization Day, we created very important legacy. We established Baku COP presidencies continuity coalition on urban climate action between 4 COP presidencies. Taking into account that initiatives on urban development started in Egypt, Egypt as a COP27 presidency, United Arab Emirates as a COP28 presidency, Azerbaijan as a COP29 presidency, and also Brazil as a COP30 presidency. These 4 COP presidents created a permanent coalition of COP presidencies jointly with UN Habitat. The day before yesterday, also similar coalition was created on climate and health topic, but this time between 5 COP presidencies. It means that COP29 presidency putting a very innovative approach to ensure complementarity and continuity between different COP presidencies initiatives, because it is very important during the designing process of our action agenda initiatives. We had consultations with all stakeholders, not only with member countries, but also with NGOs, with civil society, think tanks, with academia, and one of the concerns that we heard, it was complementarity and continuity between different initiatives, because it is important issue. That's why we integrated this issue into the several initiatives of COP29 presidency. Today we will launch also important initiative on water, because today is Nature and Biodiversity Day, Gender Equality Day, Indigenous People Day, and today we'll at 11 o'clock we'll launch also important initiative on water. It will be Baku Dialogue on Water for Climate Action. All these initiatives are important, and jointly with Brazil also we have a platform from Baku to Belém, and we will operationalize during this year, because officially our presidency started November this month, and until Belém, as a COP29 president, Azerbaijan will continue operationalize all initiatives. We have 14 initiatives, 9 of them are declarations, 5 are partnerships, important partnerships. I already mentioned Baku Initiative on Human Development for Climate Resilience, Baku Initiative for Climate Finance, Investment and Trade, and also we have Transparency Platform Initiative and several other initiatives like Harmonia for farmers in agricultural field and other several initiatives. Once again, I would like to greet all, welcome to Baku for guests, and I wish very interesting debates and successful outcome of today's event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mamedov. It's, of course, a very positive thing that there are permanent committees being established in between the countries hosting COP sessions. So it shows that the work that we're conducting here has a kind of continuity and will have a long-term effect. Of course, it's a very, very pleasing fact. And as a follow-up of our keynote speech by Mr. Elmar Mamedjarov, I'm pleased to give the floor to the representative of the country that will host COP30 next year. So with that, the floor is given to His Excellency Manuel Adalberto Carlos Montenegro Lopez de la Cruz, Ambassador of Brazil to the Republic of Azerbaijan.
Well, thank you. Good morning. My name is actually shorter. My code name is Manuel Montenegro. Thank you. Well, I thank the ILO for this this invitation I got from Christina and also from a good friend Anita a few weeks before. And I'd like to start by saying that how happy in Brazil we all are that in 2023 we rebooted with our consultations on technical cooperation South-South after some time. And this cooperation started way back in 1987, and it benefits all of Latin America and Africa according to our priorities, of course, at the time. Since 2005, through our Brazilian Cooperation Agency, we've worked with ILO in over 40 countries in around 4 strategic objectives, which are rights at work, employment, social protection, and social dialogue. And of course, the government of President Lula has taken social justice, labor rights, etc., as a priority. And in 2023, we launched at the annual review conference the new program document, which goes from 2023 to 2027, which is called Social Justice for the Global South. And we work with ILO on 4 areas: eradication of child and forced labor, occupational safety, gender, race and generational equity, and employment and social protection. Brazil has also taken the issue of social justice, and of course we'll approach later in this panel a just transition for climate. And Brazil took this as a theme of the agenda of the G20, which had the summit in Rio a few days ago. And we have three goals: social inclusion, energy transition, and reform of global governance, which is a wider issue. And we work with the ILO, cooperating. The ILO works within the task forces that were established by the G20 in the areas of Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty, which now has 80-some countries endorsing it. Mobilization against climate change, and we have also working groups on several issues with the ILO. So I'll stop here and give back this floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you, Mr. Mamedov. So with this very nice introduction, I think we can move to our first session of today's event, which is dedicated to the issue of just transition finance plans for reducing coal and or fossil fuels dependency, strengthening the NDCs. And before introducing the speakers, I would like to ask you to give another round of applause to our keynote speakers. Thank you very much. And now I'd like to announce the speakers for the next session. We'll have a pleasure of the company of Mr. Raymond Pilcher, President of Raven Ridge Resources Incorporated. If Mr. Pilcher is here, I would like to ask him to take his place. Then we have a very interesting list of speakers. Mr. Engtushvin Ganbaatar, the head of Strategy Planning Division from the Ministry of Energy of Mongolia. Well, please take your seat in the panel. And we have the representative from Spain, Ms. Judith Carreras Garcia, head of cabinet at the Institute for Just Transition under the Spanish Ministry of Ecological Transition and Demographic Challenge. So far we have, she will be speaking online. That's very nice. And it is my particular pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, to give the floor to Dr. Cristina Martinez, Senior Specialist at Enterprise Development and Green Jobs, WET, Eastern Europe and Central Asia, and ILO Regional Office for Europe and Central Asia. So, Cristina, the floor is yours.
Thank you very, very much, our wonderful Master of Ceremonies today. I want to say good morning to everybody and thank you for being with us when we arrived a little bit late due to the road closures. The very first thing I want to say is thank you to the Ministry of Labor here in Azerbaijan, and we have some representatives here. Svelata, are you around? Where are our colleagues? Svelata, is she with us? I just want to acknowledge their assistance with this event and with all the facilitation that you have done, Svelata. Thank you so much. A big applause for her. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's not the time of thank you yet, but it's good to say it before she needs to run away. So let me also acknowledge our colleagues online. We have a broadcasting to all regions of the ILO, to the whole world, but also we have the members of the regional network on enterprise development and green jobs of the ILO, and they are following your deliberations and your discussions. So, let me now welcome the first presentation, and that will be Mr. Raymond Pilcher, and he was introduced before already from our Master of Ceremonies. Could you put the first speaker online? Yes, Mr. Raymond Pilcher. And Raymond is going to tell us about some innovative ways of thinking about fossil fuels and reducing coal or reutilizing some of the waste. Raymond, I'm not going to go into your speech, but please tell us about the work that you are doing also with UNICEF.
Yes, thank you, and good morning, Christina. It's good to see you, and I'm sorry I can't be there with you. I work with the UNECE as the chair of the group of experts on coal mine methane and just transition. It has three platforms that might be of interest to some of the attendees and those online. We have three task forces, one on methane emissions reductions, one on safe operation and closure of coal mines, and the third one on just transition. The talk that I'll be giving today is really about mine closure and repurposing and coping with abandoned mine methane and profiting from mine waste. Could I have the first slide, please? So in this slide, I have a couple of points, and they are that we normally look at the coal mining life cycle in a fairly simplistic way. And I mean this from people who are practitioners within the industry. We usually begin with mine planning. If we're looking at mines that will have a lot of gas, we do some early exploration. We determine the amount of gas, design the coal mine in such a way that it remains safe for all of the people underground, and make certain that the operations are smooth. And through time, what happens is that the mine, of course, expands. It may have to change its plan from time to time, and eventually resources are depleted and the mine is closed. I think this is not news to anyone that's listening. If it's gassy, there is an opportunity in the beginning to understand not just the impact it'll have on the smooth operation of the mine, but also the potential for either using that gas or at least destroying it so it doesn't go to atmosphere as a powerful greenhouse gas, as we all understand. After the mine is closed, the gas continues to fill the mine sometimes for decades, depending on if it floods or not. What this says is that when we're talking about strategic mine closure plans, they actually have to parallel the resource extraction designs. The economic complexities are inextricably linked, and they need to be recognized from the beginning. A corollary to that is that the closure plans also should incorporate viable pathways for communities to thrive, where repurposing and innovation become platforms for sustainable economic regeneration. Next slide, please. One of the ways that we believe this financing of this next stage in the evolution of these coal mine, our mined lands, is that if we look at the history, recent history, we see that back in 2011, the coal mining sector was valued around 1.27 trillion US dollars. By 2020, that value had decreased to around 500 billion US dollars. And in 2023, the value was approximately 600 billion. This year, it's gone up a little bit more. The erosion of value, I think we all understand, is due mostly to the fact that there are competing systems for generating electricity. Renewables are making their headway around the world, some cases more quickly than others. New business models are being developed for active and idle mines. And part of this is related to reprocessing mine tailings. And I have to tell you that one of the reasons that it's being investigated is because often when these mines are first created, they're bonded in such a way that when these mines are closed, there should be money to do complete closure and to repurpose that land. In almost every case, in almost every country, there are examples where this is not the case. There is not enough money left to be doing that. We're starting to see the value can be created by moving, refining, and manufacturing to these repurposed mines. And over the next few slides, I'll explain more about why this might be something that can be done. Next slide, please. We're offering a new approach to this. We believe that coal itself has a lot of potential beyond energy production. When coal is extracted and processed, it can yield both carbon materials, not for consumption as energy, but as consumption for construction materials, etc., and valuable minerals. Methane at these gassy mines are, as I say, they can last for decades after the mine is closed. And if you are mining this coal, you have to contend with this gas every day. But it can be removed safely, it can be used as a feedstock or other industrial processes. Utilizing these resources creates new economic opportunities. It supports the idea of and the process of equitable and just transition. It preserves and creates jobs. It reduces community impacts during energy transition. And it by identifying and managing financial risks as coal for fuel when it's being phased down, we can start to mitigate the idea or the concept of stranded asset exposure. We can do this with real practices. It frees resources for energy transition investments, and it's also a guide for traditional gold companies towards sustainable business opportunities by providing critical raw materials and creates new revenue streams for coal companies. Next slide, please. One of the ways that we've investigated, and there's a reference to the paper that we wrote on this, is that trust structures can be developed and used to secure the future of coal mining communities. We actually had an acronym that we assigned to this called Financial Assurance, Financial Assurance and Security Trust, or FAST. And what we saw by the investigations that we made and through looking at trust structures that exist today, that there are ways to support these from the coal mining enterprises themselves in the early years, government contributions, labor unions, reinsurance entities could be very strong in this, NGOs, and of course, multilateral banking entities. This can be activated when mine closure planning begins. And again, I'd like to point out that mine closure planning should have started when the mine was opened. What are the benefits? Well, the worker benefits and support come in terms of things like healthcare coverage during the transition phase, educational support and reskilling, community redevelopment assistance, and monthly, and I put this in quotes, Social Security payments. These can be actual payments or they can be in-kind things, they can be other services. And the duration of this should continue until successful community transition takes place. We see often that there's money early on in the transition, but it begins to winnow through time, and this is a problem that we've seen in many of the examples we studied. Next slide, please. So this isn't just a pipe dream. There are reasons for us to believe that there's a possibility of repurposing these mineral deposits in a way that they can actually continue to generate income and actually feed the green energy transition. Recent work has shown that there are abundant rare earth elements that occur in significant amounts in coal deposits. And more importantly, in the waste material that's often piled up on top of the ground as that coal is mined. It's been found recently in the last several years that acid mine drainage in some coal deposits that are mined in West Virginia have high levels of rare earth elements and other valuable metals. And more recently, in the last 3 years, a Wyoming thermal coal producer has discovered rare earth elements purportedly worth $37 billion US in the tailings and in the unmined coal. And that work is done not just by the company, but actually by some third parties and supported by the US government. So these are real examples of real possibilities. We know from the literature that there are also possibilities in other parts of the US, in India, in China, and we know in Australia that they're working on the same issues and developing some strategies for remining. Coal industry knowledge and experience related to beneficiation of these coal-associated materials are still being gained, but there's a lot of research being done, and there's a lot of encouraging results. But I'll tell you, as somebody who's run these kinds of programs, that exploration programs for coal are not designed at least at this point in time to test for metals and other elements unless they're environmental pollutants. So this means that there has to be actually a strategic change in the approach we take when we talk about mine plans. Next slide, please. I'm sure that many of you in the audience can't see this, but I presume that these will be available online or some other way at some point. But this is a flow diagram that shows how the assets of the coal mine on the left side of the diagram and through extraction, processing, shipping, and markets can actually generate this income and generate a lot of jobs in the meantime. One thing that to keep in mind is that if we want to really be competitive with these kinds of projects, again, the idea is it's not just to do what we normally do, which is mine materials, send them somewhere to be manufactured, and then that manufactured product gets shipped off. But it could also be that the repurposed land could become an industrial community where everything is moved closer to this redeveloped and regenerated system or ecosystem so that you're actually producing these materials and manufacturing those products there and shipping the finished product. So this also is important in a number of countries where raw materials are just mined and then shipped away. This actually brings more value closer to the communities that may otherwise be stricken by the closure of these coal mines. Next slide, please. So we recognize at the UNEC that the shift is needed to realize a just and equitable future for all. One of our suggestions is establish trust structures that facilitate management and transfer of these assets, in addition to ensuring long-term funding for equitable transitions. This is important because in many cases, when mines are closed, many things are left in disarray. And I'm not just talking about the land itself, but I'm talking about titles to the mineral rights, any kind of potential permissions or permits that need to be retained, are often and in many times very quickly disposed of by the mine operator simply because they want to be released for the liabilities as soon as possible, as soon as they've met their commitments. In cases where the commitments aren't met, then that means that those costs are socialized, and it means that there's an even more important reason for making sure that these deeds, titles, permissions, and so forth are consolidated. So having a trust structure that's able to contain these real assets and be able to also have the money and the funding to deploy in the ways that they need to be allocated at the right time through time for this transition to take place is a very important concept. And this isn't the only way that this can be achieved, but it's one way. Transforming traditional resources into advanced materials and research at active coal mines will identify new sources of these high-value carbon products. These carbon products are important not only for building and supplanting or at least partially substituting for steel, as building materials. It's also the nanotubes that can be used in a variety of industries in a variety of ways. It can be graphene, which is now being used for chip manufacture, at least in the beginning. There's some experimental and very exciting things that are being done with that. So coal deposits and mine waste should be analyzed, and this should be a part of the repurposing, but also strategies for taking these mined lands that were not actually recovered and restored in a way that's the way that they should have. So by sampling and looking at these materials, we might have actually the funding for doing that repurposing and restructuring that needs to be done. Additionally, we know from fly ash that we know that fly ash from many mine mouth power plants actually has already in a way beneficiated some of these materials. And in that fine ash and glass that's left, there are many of these metals that can be refined. I know that this is already recognized because in the United States, many of the large fly ash deposits are now under the ownership of other companies, which are actually using these for things like green cement, but they're also investigating the potential of mining them and actually distilling these, or I should say, beneficiating these metals out of these materials. Some coal mine sites may have abundant methane. In fact, many of the deeper coal mines throughout the world do have methane. This can be used as a source of energy for beneficiation of these processes we just talked about, other refining processes, but unfortunately, almost always, and in most cases, it's released to the atmosphere. So this is another angle that we can look at. There's a potential for actually doing something different with this methane. And finally, our expert group works with other ECE expert groups, which are subsidiary bodies of the Committee on Sustainable Energy. And what I can tell you is that among those 6 bodies, there are many brilliant people that are waiting to be helpful and helping you with your issues related to mine closure, mine repurposing, just transition, and any other of the technical problems that we might be able to look at from energy efficiency, resource management, etc. So that ends my talk, and I'll stay online and answer questions when it's appropriate. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please join me to thank you, Rai. Rai, it has been a fantastic presentation. I think the last words that he mentioned about the expertise that is available and the group of experts that are really brilliant people thinking about ways to change business models, enterprise development oriented to innovation in an area that we really need to think how are we going to transition to other types of development that bring the jobs that we want, the quality of jobs, and also areas of growth that are different from those that are putting us in danger as the human species. So, Rai, thank you so much. Stay on the line, please. And we
Yes,
are going now to a different country and a different experience. Rai was already putting forward these business models, recycling of the methane, which is very, very interesting developments. But now we are going to Spain first, please. We are going to Spain because we have Judith from the Just Transition Institute of the Ministry of the Ecological Transition of Spain. And Judith is going to talk about an example of a region in transition with particular tripartite agreements. So an interesting experience. Judith, are you on the line? Yes. I think you are muted, Judith.
No, I would say I'm not.
You are good.
Can you hear me?
Thank you so much. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you to the ILO for inviting us to be there. And I'm sorry I cannot be there with you in person. It's for me a pleasure to be here and share our experience as part of this triangular cooperation, because as we are all countries moving into uncharted territories, I would say the sharing of experience become very important to learn one from another. I have a PPT, a presentation. I would like to ask you if we could put it on. Yes, that's the one. So if you can move to next slide, please. As you were saying, something I would say that it's been important for Spain to develop activities related with the just transition. It's been first the political commitment and having a regulation, because at the beginning of the political term, it was adopted what we call an energy and climate strategic framework, which has different, I would say, pillars. It's grounded on 4 different pillars. On the one hand, the climate and energy law, as you see, then a national energy and climate plan for 2021, to 2030, then the adaptation plan, and then something very important is the just transition strategy. So we found that in the same way we are defining environmental, I would say, objectives and targets, we thought it was very important to address and accompany through a strategy and concrete actions the socioeconomic impacts. So for us, the just transition strategy, it's important to optimize the benefits of ecological transition, looking at jobs, social cohesion and competitiveness, but also to minimize the adverse consequences. This just transition strategy came together with what we call an urgent action plan, which defined the first actions to be undertaken, and then there are mainly related to the coal regions and the coal-fired power plants, because there was, with this urgent action plan, the commitment of closing the coal mines in Spain and the 15 coal-fired power plants, which, by the way, apart from environmental issues, they had a problem with, say, competitiveness there. Also, something important for me to sign on is that under the climate energy law, there is the obligation to revise the just transition strategy every 5 years, understanding that this is a live process, an ongoing process, and therefore we need to sort of revise over time where efforts need to be deployed and put by the administration. And something also very important that has allowed the administration to be able to undertake actions, it's been the anchoring of all of this in an institution with the creation of the Just Transition Institute that, as Christina was saying, is part of the Ministry for Ecological Transition. If you can, next slide, please. Here, as I was saying, we signed what we call sectoral tripartite agreements, two tripartite agreements with the trade union, the company, and the government. One of them, which is the framework agreement for a just transition for coal and mining sustainable development, which basically means the closure of the mining in Spain. And then also another agreement in 2020 for the agreement for a just transition for coal-fired power plants, for the closure of 15 coal-fired power plants in Spain. Very important for us here, it's been, as we say, the fact that these agreements are tripartite agreements that have been discussed and negotiated with the companies and with the trade unions to define a number of measures to accompany this closure. Also very important, it's been what we call the just transition agreements. In a way, we can say that the labor dimension is at the core, and the ILO guidelines at the core of our action, but we also understand that these coal-fired power plants are in a specific territories, and there is a need to do a reactivation, a revitalization of those areas. And all of that, as I'm saying, we've done through public participation. Here you can see in this map, Spain, these different colors you see are the places where we define the just transition agreements because we have the coal-fired power plants. And in particular, I'm going to refer to a region which is called El Bierzo, which is the one surrounded with the red spot and an arrow. So I'm talking about that particular region that even if you see there's more coal power plants and mines around because it's a mining area. This means, I would say, that the complexity we face there is bigger than in other places. Next slide, please. Okay, here, so you can see a more specific map of El Bierzo, where you can see that we had four mining areas and then also 2 coal power plants. I'm not going to get into details with that, but for us it was very important, of course, in each one, these, I would say, sites to identify the numbers of direct workers who've been working on those workers on the payroll, but also the affected workers, the outsourced workers that their income, I would say, of their companies was very much linked to the activity of the mines and also the coal power plants. Also, and this gave a number so that I have an understanding, around 660 workers. But also, as I was saying, this area is close to other regions where we had workers working on that. So there's around 706 workers affected for it. Next slide, please. Okay, the first thing we did, it was what we call a socioeconomic analysis of the area, because we understand that there's no one silver bullet, and that we needed to develop tailor-made policies, specific and differentiated, depending, I would say, on each one of the areas, because there was differences on the different sites where the coal-fired power plants were. For that, we did the characterizations of the municipalities in the area, looking at demographics, infrastructure, socioeconomic conditions. We also undertook actions. We also looked at the economic activities and employment, also at the nature reality, and previous speaker were referring to that, the question of the natural liabilities. It's been an issue particularly because we had open pit mines, and then also El Bierzo is a very highly sensitive protected area, that's protected area high value in terms of biodiversity, that we looked into that as well. And then also what we did is trying to identify a specific asset with development potential. This type of analysis, of economic analysis, we undertook it for the 15th time. Next slide, please. Okay, and then here I will explain the different actions we undertook and the measures deployed, that I will define them on these different groupings. On the one hand, agreements directly affected to workers. For instance, it was very important, as I was saying, to give a specific, I would say, to undertake specific policies to these affected workers that I was naming, that were in this area. It was around 700, when they were 720, and for that, some of them went in early retirement, around 100 of them, and for the rest, we developed social aid. Social protection has been very important, and also job banks. We undertook a specific individualized professional advice, exercise training on reskilling and skilling, and then also on a context of special difficulties, it was the question of salary evaluation, because we know that these, I would say, employments were very well paid. So that's something we had to look into, I would say, when undertaking the social protection, but also for the possible alternative job individualization. Something also very important for us, where we undertook actions, it was related with the synergies of environment and jobs. Also here, the previous speaker were referring to it. In those areas, we found that there was around 1,000 hectares degraded, and it was very important to ensure of the environmental restoration of those areas for a number of reasons. For aspects related with well-being, for the improvement also of the water quality, aspects related with waste management, and also because we understand that the repurposing of that land is very important when thinking on new, I would say, economic activities in present and future. Next slide, please. Other measures deployed, it's been initiatives, I would say, to ensure economic diversification. Those areas have been very important on the past, I would say, on the development of the space and of energy in the past, but we understand that they also need to be important areas, I would say, for the development of the space in the present and in the future. For that, when we signed the agreements, tripartite agreements, we also, as part of, I would say, the activities identified, there was an agreement with the companies to make sure that they invest on the regions where they previously were. And for that also there's been supported schemes, and we see projects related with innovative projects for storage use, reversible pumping, or innovative projects for thermal electricity, renewable energies, or circular repowering. Also, we understand that it's very important to diversify the economy and support the local economic fabric. That's for the reason why we supported specific local business and projects. And we see yes, 9 large projects that have been supported and 17 smaller investment projects on this area. And that's the funds we mobilized with the state aid, around 5 million in grants to mobilize up to real leverage to mobilize 38 million. Next slide. Next slide, please. And then also what has been very important, as I was saying, the tripartite dimension is the core of the action. We also see very importantly to work closely with municipalities, also particularly because some of them, they were receiving, I would say, funds coming from the economic activities, and the fact of the closure, it had also an impact on their fiscal capacity and financial possibilities. And we also understood that as part of this transitioning, it was important to work closely with them and support critical projects for those municipalities. In that sense, we have investment in projects related with urban wastewater treatment or the industrial warehouse, for example, with the chestnut processing, because it's very important on the area. Or we've been also supporting logistic centers for forest biomass. I'm not going to go through of them. You will have the PPT, but like this, you can have a gist of the type of projects that have been supported. And in that sense, social participation has been very important for us, and also gender perspective. We also understand that the just energy transition can be a moment to close certain existing gaps. One of the gaps we would see is that the coal sector was very male-dominated. We understood that the new jobs need also to create opportunities for women. That's the reason also why in some of these different, I would say, state aids that have been deployed, there have been put targets in terms of job creation, well, to make sure, as I'm saying, also that all community is benefiting from that. And an important element, and I really want to stress that, for us, what has been, I would say, the benchmark of success of the activities we're undertaking is to make sure that the number of jobs that are being created is at least as high as those that have been destroyed. And also we understand that it's very important to have, as I'm saying, this traction or this driver or these big projects also in the region, because we understand that the industrial projects, they have the capacity, but they tend to have higher salaries than, for example, those coming from primary sector or services sector, and which is important, I would say, to look into those elements. Next slide, please. Okay, and here quickly some of our lessons learned. First one, the importance of anticipation. We think it's very important. The sooner we anticipate, I would say, and then there is clear targets, the sooner you can start deploying measures and embracing and getting engaged on this consultative process, as I was mentioning. A very second important element. It's what we say, the importance of working with active and operational companies. We saw a big difference between the mining sector and the coal-fired power plant companies when working with the stranded assets. This hinders the just transition, but for example, in the case of the coal-fired power plants, the type of agreements we had, it really involved, I would say, the companies in this transition, and it's been one of the enabling elements of success. Then also, we believe it's very important that the companies themselves establish internal just transition plans when thinking on what it implies decarbonization and how to accompany the workers, I would say, of their companies in the process of skilling and reskilling. And the last one, please, next slide. And here, the element of governance and participation. We think that it's the key of success. It's in our case, we're very decentralized, I would say, political system. So the not always easy, but very important, the role of that the different administrations can play, be it national level, regional, local, it's been fundamental, and the coordination, I would say, of all these different administrations, it's very much necessary and the key of success. And the last one, that's more reflecting on putting on the table, we've also experienced a sort of tension between participation and urgency. On the one hand, we see the urgency of taking actions, but we also know that participation.
I think we perhaps lost Judith, but she was really finishing, right? Is she there? Is she still there? Okay, thank you so much, Judith. Please join me to thank you her for her presentation. Thank you. And there were two, the presentation is excellent. We will circulate these presentations, all the presentations of the forum, but there were two things quite significant for a just transition of a particular area. And one is involving the municipalities. We talk many times about the global level and the national level. We really need to go to the regional level and the local level for implementing just transition plans. And the plan that Spain, the Spanish government, did in the region of Bierzo really engaged with the local municipalities, including financially. So she mentioned, Judith, 20 million were utilized to assist these municipalities. The second point that was quite important is companies in the region need to have just transition plans for decarbonization. It's not just the role of the government, it's also the role of workers and employer organizations that together with enterprises produce just transition plans that contribute to the NDCs as well, to the national determined contributions. So it's all the way from the top of the global level to down to the localities, including the small communities. So I think this example can also be inspiring for our countries represented here. And now we go to another part of the world because we have Mongolia here with us. And Mr. Ekusing, please, the floor is yours to tell us about
Thank you.
Mongolia's case.
Thank you for your introduction. My name is Tushin. I am the Director of Strategy Division, Ministry of Energy, Mongolia. So today I'm going to introduce about Mongolia's renewable energy development and also the just energy transition. Okay.
You can say next, and they will go.
First slide. First slide. First slide, please. First. Okay, so Mongolia is landlocked country with the two neighbors, and we are importing 22% of energy from our two neighbors, and 72% is produced from coal-fired power plants. And there is 4 energy systems, and the Western energy system, and Alta-Ulesta system, and Central energy system, and Eastern energy system. So Western energy system is 80% dependent on the imported electricity.
You just can say next.
Okay, next please.
Next slide, and they will do it for you.
So Mongolia has committed on the Paris Climate Change Agreement that we will reduce the CO2 emissions 22.9% compared with the base year. So in order to achieve this target, we are supporting renewable energy projects and energy efficiency, energy conservation policies. Next, please. Okay. So the installed capacity of renewable energy is now currently at 19.1%. There is wind power plants and solar PVs and some small hydro power projects throughout our country. So in the Western energy system and Alta-Ulesta system, we are paying special attention because until 2030, this region will become 100% renewable energy region. So in order to increase the renewable energy share in this region, we are working with the ADB and World Bank. With the help of financial support, we are implemented 35 megawatts of solar and wind. And also in cooperation with the Chinese Exim Bank, we are building 90 megawatt hydropower plant in the region. In other regions, we also going to implement solar and wind auction projects and also battery storage, hydropower plant, hydro pumped storage projects in order to achieve the NDC targets. Next, please. This one. So in order to achieve these targets, we have established and amended the laws and policy documents. For example, Vision 2050 long-term policy documents, we have an objective to develop low carbon, productive and inclusive green economy and contribute to international efforts to mitigate climate change. And also we have renewable energy law adopted in 2007 and amended several times. The last amendment was in 2019. The main purpose to amend the renewable energy law was to adopt the auction system, because feed-in tariff system was bringing us a lot of difficulties in terms of financial and technology aspects. So we have amended the law, and also we adopted the solar residential productions. So consumers and some enterprises can install the solar rooftop system, and they can produce the energy for their own themselves. So this was the major purpose of this law amendment. So in order to increase the renewable energy and integrate more renewable energy in the system, we need system stability. So in that purpose, we have adopted new battery storage project this year. I think it's the biggest one in the region. Its capacity is 80 megawatt and 232 megawatt hours of capacity. So this will help reduce the risk of power outage, and also it will allow the increase energy supply from renewable energy, and so on. So this kind. This energy transition have to be just, and in order to make policies to enhance this just energy transition, we are working with the UNDP, UNESCAP, and other UN organizations. And recently, the UNDP have published the National Human Development Paper in 2024. They addressed several energy challenges to transit from conventional fossil fuel dominated energy sector to bring renewable energy sector. For example, coal powered heating, and also import energy to fill gaps, aging infrastructure, healthcare expenditure, electricity load shedding, air pollution, high fossil fuel subsidies, and so on. And so, Government of Mongolia, Ministry of Energy is working with the UNDP to address these goals, two challenges, and we have recently working with the UNDP to implement joint evaluation for vulnerable groups, how this will energy transition will impact vulnerable groups and health education centers. So these evaluation documents have three major goals. The first one is develop just energy transition framework, align with the new NDC and SDG targets directly addressed by joint program. And second one is climate financing framework, developed for just energy transition. And third one is just and inclusive energy transition roadmap on health education centers, developed contributing to creation of safe and healthy environment, and improved essential services to all children and vulnerable. So to achieve the and to fulfill this just energy transition, UNDP have suggested several policy steps. For example, strategic, institutional, and government measures, and also it in short, medium, and long terms. So legal and regulatory and standardization methods and other policy options. So I will introduce about specific projects to increase the renewable energy share in our country. Grid resilience and grid improvements and infrastructure is essential to implement the new renewable energy projects. This is some of the projects that we are going to implement with the international financial organizations such as EBRD, World Bank, ADB. So this is our technologies which we adopt to phase out of coal and to stick to renewable and new technologies, wind energy, water, solar, and geothermal. And green hydrogen and nuclear energy technologies are long-term options. So this is some biggest projects we are going to implement in the mid and long term. The first project is Irdenburg hydropower plant project. It is already construction is started and it will be finished in 2028. So this is the locations that hydropumped power plant will be implemented because solar and wind energy is a variable energy. It will heavily depend on the weather and climate situation. If the wind not blows, if there is cloudy, this will not produce electricity. So hydropumped storage projects are very important to maintain the grid resilience and stability. This is a hydropower projects, and this feasibility study was carried out with the ADB. Okay, so this is introduction. So next we are going to implement solar auction until 2030. The total capacity will be 220 megawatts. Okay, so this is the time frame how we're going to implement the solar auction system. This is the wind auction planning, where we're going to implement the location and the capacities. So by implementing these renewable energy projects, we will reach our GHG emission reduction targets before 2030, around 2025 next year, and 2030 we will triple our objectives. So renewable energy deployment is very important. So in same time, by supporting the bigger projects, we are also supporting the consumer residential based solar PVs, like I mentioned earlier. We are supporting the consumers with the high feed-in tariffs. If they produce electricity in the off-peak hours, the tariff is lower. And if they produce electricity in the peak hours, we will give them more incentives and higher tariffs. So far until today, within 1 or 2 years, there was a significant increase of these consumers. 212 consumers are already signed the agreement to produce small solar projects with the local distribution system. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Please join me to thank you, our speaker. Another very, very good example of how renewable energy can advance, and Mongolia is doing really well on these regards, and I hope it will help also significantly the issues of heating during winter, which is an important barrier for citizens living there. We are now moving into the panel. Please stay with us here because we are going to be joined by Mr. Atul. Please come to the stage. Mr. Atul is Sopti, is Director General, Standing Committee of Public Enterprise Scope in India. And we are joined also online by Dr. Samantha Sharp, Associate Professor, Institute for Sustainable Futures, University Technology, Australia, in Sydney. So thank you so much, Samantha, for being with us, and Mr. Atul, thank you so much also for joining the panel. What we want to do now is to hear from our expert panel on some comments, could be also questions, and we have the speakers online, and they can provide any answer if needed. Or it might be questions also for you and Samantha after your comments. So please, Mr. Atul, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Christina. It's a great opportunity for me to be present and share my views. And I like to again congratulate and compliment ILO for organizing this collaborative approach. I was very happy to see here the resolution which was there in 2023 for the urgent action to advance just transition. In fact, incidentally, during the International Labour Conference, I was also party to it in the drafting committee also. So it's very interesting to see that. It's an excellent report which has come out. I heard the presentations by Mr. Raymond, Mr. Ray, Ms. Ray, and Mr. Ganbatar on various aspects. And all the presentations were excellent. And in fact, you summarize also the kind of coverage they had made. So I like to talk one by one. First thing I like to talk the presentation which was by Mr. Raymond, especially on the closed abandoned mines. I'll talk about that because that's a very interesting subject. Because world over we are talking of closing of the mines. But I was very happy to see the way he presented that these abandoned mines also have a lot of things to left inside, whether it's form of methane or the rare earth material, or in terms of the material which can be used for various purposes. In fact, in India, if I take the example of India, where in fact which is the second largest producer of the coal today, and fifth largest coal reserves are there in India, and we are going in a big way for the energy transition to the renewables. There also it's a big issue. In fact, as per one estimate, there are close to 169 mines which have been closed prior to 2009 and 130 post 2009, and many more are in the process of closure. And AMM, that is the abandoned mine methane, this is an opportunity also, and this is a challenge also, as mentioned by Mr. Raymond in his very exhaustive presentation. In India, in fact, we have formed a policy that this policy was formulated way back in 1997 and was made, changes were there because on one hand, we are trying to make use of it for the gas, for the energy purpose, but on the other hand, we need to ensure that there are challenges related to the global warming, there are challenges related to energy waste, there are challenges related to the explosion risk are there for these mines also. In fact, as per one of the study, there has been in fact in European Union also, the mines which have been closed, there also at present, methane is coming out and which is in fact not getting measured. So this is a very, very serious subject. And since 2015, in European Unions, the mines which have been closed, nearly 200,000 tons of methane per year they are emitting. I think Mr. Raymond will throw some light on that. This remains rather relatively unchecked because there is ambiguity in the policies also. But definitely, this opportunity should be used in a proper balanced manner and keeping in view the problems attendant to this. I like to request Mr. Raymond during the discussions also, can we have some kind of financial model? I mean some suggestion or some work which has been done, which is the financial model that for the closure of these mines, how the closure of these mines benefits can be evaluated, what kind of approach need to be adopted for these closure of mines. This is one thing I like to request him. Coming to the Spain, that presentation was also very nice by Miss Ray, and in fact in that presentation one point was very important. I found the Just Transition Institute. I think we like to know some more points on the Just Transition Institute, and you rightly mentioned that they are involving the local municipalities also there. That's a very, very important point. And it's not the job of only government. I represent the employers in the International Organization of Employers. It is not only of the job of the government, but it is the job of the employers also, and of course employees also, because they are the persons who are affected. And I like to know something more about we can discuss also. Just Transition Institute is an excellent idea which has been initiated there in Spain. Third, the Mongolia presentation. I was very happy to see that the way you have set your targets, today renewable energy is constituting only 19%, and you want to take it to 30%, approximately 30% by 2030. That's a big decision which has been taken by Mongolia. India also has got something like similar, of course, maybe on a much bigger scale. But we also, just to share with the participants here, in India in 2015, we set the target that we will reduce the emission intensity of its GDP by 33 to 35% from 2005 level in 2030. And I am pleased to share that 33% has already been achieved. Then what happened in 2022, we enhanced these NDCs and we increased it to 45% level. And we are quite confident that we will be able to achieve that 45% also. Second big decision was taken, although a country which was dependent on coal in a big way, a bold decision was taken that we will have 40% of the cumulative electrical power from the non-fossil fuel based energy resources by 2030. And we have already achieved the 43% as against the 40% target. Again, we have further revised this target, and now we want to achieve 50% cumulative electric power installed capacity from non-fossil fuel based energy resources by 2030. And 500 gigawatt of the power plants are going to be established there. Mongolia is doing a great work in that particular regard. I like to know from my Mongolian friend during the discussion that how they are addressing the local people when they are getting displaced. Of course, you have mentioned something, but we would like to discuss something more. When the people are displaced by closing of the power plants, etc., say coal-based power project, people who are working in this coal-based power project, that is not only affecting the employers, but in a big way the SMEs also. Around the area, so many SMEs you come, so that's an area of concern. Last, I like to mention that all the discussions, everybody is on the same page that just transition is the key for saving our planet. And all of us have to work together in that direction, and we are committed for that. Thank you, Christina.
Thank you very much, Mr. Atul. Please join me to thank you, Mr. Atul. Very, very important points and many questions. So let's go to Samantha. Dr. Samantha, are you online, please? We cannot hear you yet. Samantha, yes. We see you. Thank you, Samantha, for joining us from Sydney. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Yes, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Christina, and thank you to all the speakers who spoke before. Really interesting experiences around energy transition. And yeah, I just wanted to offer a few reflections from my experiences. So I've been working with ILO and some other partners in the Asia-Pacific region to understand some of the socio-economic impacts of energy transition, and specifically around coal phase out. And this work predominantly draws on the employment impacts, and so that's what I wanted to talk a little bit about today. I guess we know at the global level and even at the national level that employment growth will outpace employment losses in energy transition. But when we get down to the subnational level that we're talking about today, when we're talking about closing down specific assets, so mines, power plants, we're talking about employment impacts that will be highly concentrated. And so that's both direct employment impacts, so the workers in those mines, in those power plants, but also and predominantly the indirect employment impacts. So all of the jobs in the local economies and in the supply chains and services that depend upon those facilities. So employment impacts, direct and indirect. So when we think about what needs to be financed when we're thinking about just energy transition and around coal phase out, first and foremost needs to be around those social protection systems for affected workers. And so that's both the directly impacted workers, and so a lot of times that's taken care of as part of the closure plans, but we also need to think about the indirect employment impacts on those communities and in the supply chains. Obviously, there's skill development and retraining that's needed, and again, that needs to be both for directly and indirectly impacted workers and enterprises. We also need to think of the economic diversification for those regions where those assets have been located. And as a Spanish colleague talked of the examples, really significant effort is needed to think about and create plans and implement those plans for the economic diversification of regions. And we really need to look at all of this transition with a gender lens, because women and men will be impacted differently by transition, specifically when we're thinking about transitioning away from carbon intensive sectors. Women are predominantly represented in the indirect impacts, and so they will have limited access to formal redundancy payments and retraining that comes from the formal closure processes. So I just wanted to, this is really going to require multiple financing mechanisms so that integrate and work towards a shared goal. And so that's why it's really important to have those broad groups of stakeholders involved in developing and implementing those just transition plans. So the workers and their organizations, employers and their organizations, and also government, and at the multiple levels of government, as Christina mentioned. I think some things that we can all take away from lessons learned, and I think this is chimes from my work, but also from the three speakers that we heard from this morning. You really need that long-term vision with clear targets. And, we're all talking about the NDCs at the moment. And so ambition around NDCs is increasing. We really need that early planning because that's critical for just transition, to get everyone involved and to have enough time for these processes to be meaningful. We need the multi-stakeholder dialogue, and we need it to be quality, and that informs responses. We need policy coordination, across government, between different levels of government. And we also need that adequate and appropriate financing, because it's not just going to be one solution. And often financing is not the only, it is a big issue, but it's not the only issue. There's other resource constraints, whether that's around human resources and skills and capacity, that we also need to think about when we're thinking about just energy transition. So thank you, and I really enjoyed the discussion.
Thank you so much, Dr. Samantha. The work that you are doing from Australia is also very inspiring for the countries and as examples of knowledge sharing. Let me just go into the end of the panel, and we have a little coffee break ready for you. But we have some questions that were also posed to the presenters. So let's have the last word from our presenters. We have Mr. Raymond. Ray, are you there? for a comment?
Yes, I am.
All right.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Please.
Yes, thank you, Christina. And, I have to say both to Mr. Atul Sobdi and Dr. Sharp that I think they both had really insightful comments. And I'd like to mention a couple of things that came out of it. One is that Dr. Sharp made it clear that early planning is critical. And I think that's really important. And, one of the things that I noticed about a number of areas that we've had the opportunity and pleasure to work in worldwide is that often this is not the case, that the closure of coal mines happens abruptly. And this is where we see most of the stress and most of the issues that unfortunately last sometimes years and even decades. We can still find in our country around Pittsburgh enclaves of mine workers that worked, some 20, 30, 40 years ago and still have issues. These communities are still suffering to some extent. Where I live in western Colorado, which is in the center of the country in the mountainous part, we find that there are a number of coal mines closing, a number of power plants are closing. And almost in every case, there's not a real possibility of good planning and just transitions that everybody can understand and plan for and expect. Colorado is the first state in the United States that has its own just transition office. And that office started off small with one person, now has a larger staff. It's getting funding, but still the funding needs to be increased, and it needs to be realized that this funding is going to have to last for many years as these areas go through transition. One of the comments I'd like to make is that when you look at the run-up of coal prices over the last several years, we have to recognize that the large coal companies that operate worldwide have huge financial resources. So as a part of the governance and a part of their social contract, it should be clear that they also have a responsibility for what comes next. I believe the ILO has done great work with its programs worldwide. I think there's still a lot of work to do. I think the financial models that Shri Sobdi asked for are actually really important. Looking at these at a mine-by-mine basis, at a regional basis, a basin-wide basis, and then going further, we can start to develop these well-developed plans so that just transition isn't something that just happens, but is something that we work towards and have the final solution for that allows people to make that step into the future. We're in the 21st century now, but unfortunately, we still have a little bit of a hangover from the 20th century. And I think we all need to work together to make sure that we make this transition before the 21st century is over with. Thank you, Christina.
Thank you very much, Ray. Very important. Let's work for the transition of the 21st century. And a question there, why the regions that have been depending on coal, on fossil fuels, have that very strong stagnation, sticking to the lack of diversification, and how difficult it is to move. Is this a stickiness that we need to think about as well? We also should have Judith on the line. I'm not sure because she was running perhaps away. Do we have Judith from Spain, from the government of Spain with us? No, I think she had to run to another meeting. But we have here, because we don't allow him to run to another meeting, the colleague from Mongolia. So please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Atul, for your question. Energy sector of Mongolia is one of the biggest employers of our country. It employs around 20,000 people. It's a big number for small countries like 3.5 million people. So transition from fossil fuel dominated energy sector to renewable energy sector is quite challenging for those who work in the energy sector, and also there is also small and medium industries who supply goods and products to these power plants. So heating sector is one of the biggest energy sectors inside. Because Mongolia is one of the coldest country in the planet, it reaches minus 40 degrees in the winter times. So one of the options for this is to reallocate the workforce from coal-fired power plants to heating sector, heat-only boilers. There will be more heat-only boilers will be built from now on. So I think it's one of the options. So that's why I emphasize that just energy transition have to be inclusive, and also it have to be engaged with the stakeholder communications and knowledge sharings. So thank you.
Thank you so much for those comments. We are going just to open the floor if there is any pressing question, because we have catch up with time, but we have the coffee break also ready for you. Is there any pressing question or comment in the audience here? Yes, Kyrgyzstan, GIA Association. Come here, please. You can get that micro and introduce yourself for those that don't know.
My name is Kuban Shalimov. I'm from Kyrgyzstan, and I'm chairman of Green Economy Committee in Business Association. And then I have a question for my colleague. For example, how about financing to the energy sector? Because of in our country, it's from bank, it's percentage very high at the moment. Minimum it's 18% from the national sums. And I want to ask from our colleague, how about your country, about the financing for the energy sector? And then second, my question is for the private sector. And in a country, we have many stakeholders, but for the private sectors, for the heating, it's also very important, because of in every country we have private sector companies for the heatings. And by the way, for new technologies, for the green technologies, it's total amount is very high. And by the way, how you can see for our country, for the private sector, also for heating systems. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question from Kyrgyzstan. Please, would you like to answer, and also the Dr. Master Atul?
Thank you very much for your question. So in Mongolian case, we have green financing mechanisms for energy efficient and green technologies in the commercial banks. The interest rate is very low, with one-digit numbers, I think, for local currency, and also there is US dollar loans for this green financing mechanism. So the small, medium enterprises and also people can borrow the money from the banks within a very short time without any delays. So yeah, this is my answer to this question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very interesting question. I'll take two replies to this. First is, of course, from the government side. Lot of support is there. There is for the financing a special what you call arm has been created. A development agencies have been created. Renewable Energy Development Agency. We call it AREDA. So they are doing the concessional financing for these projects. There are green bonds which are being issued, for the green financing, and last year itself, I think close to 170 billion US dollar bonds were issued. This is on the financing side. But another point very important is, I believe that financial assistance alone will not make the things viable. Things have to be on their own, they have to become viable. In India, when the renewable energy were coming forward, at that point of time, 80% of our power requirement were being met by the coal-based power projects. In fact, I was heading an organization which was manufacturer of this coal-based power plant equipment at that point of time. At that point of time, I'll talk in rupees, the generation cost from a solar power project was 12 rupees. 12 rupees, you just can convert it. And from coal-based power project, it was 3 rupee. Nobody thought that what you call solar-based power projects will ever be viable. What happened? Government of India, they opened all these power plants for the private sector in a big way. What you call foreign investment were also coming in a big way. Solar panels were also allowed to be imported, and and concessional financing was also coming from overseas. As a result, I am pleased to share with you that divergence has taken place, rather convergence has taken place, and the solar-based power plant generation cost is rather lower than the coal-based power plants. So on their own, they have become viable. Today, many private players are there in the field and they are making money. They are making money. So it's not the push factors always will help. It's the pull factor also of the business will also have. So we have to work in tandem for all these things. This is a short reply for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And of course, the session today was addressing financial plans. Now, do we have anybody online that wants to make a comment or a question? Is there anybody online? Freddie, I think that you wanted to make a comment. Is there anybody online? I think the technology is checking. No? Rai is there, but I don't think he's really there. Because Rai.
Well, actually, I'm here. I'm sorry. I thought you were looking for other people
yes,
to
no,
make.
if you want to make a comment, go ahead, if you like.
Well, I mean, I think one of the things that came out of the discussion that was what we just had is very important. I mean, I think one of the things that we see happening worldwide is that green energy is taking a real foothold. There have been a lot of different ways for financing. And one of the reasons that we wrote the paper that we did related to trust structures was to actually find a way to deploy a lot of renewables in certain parts of the world. We actually were doing that in an answer to a discussion that we had with UNDP. And that is that for massive deployment of renewable energy, there needs to be a long-term financial plan. This has to do with a number of things, obviously the capital costs, but also the fact that we look at fossil fuels and they are so embedded in the way that we run our energy programs throughout most countries. It's really important that you have a long-term and viable source of finance so that you not only build the big power plants, which are important, but also able to build these smaller power plants and to deploy them in communities that otherwise might even go unnoticed, that are still energy poor or have energy poverty. And I think these things we have to look at in a holistic manner. And I believe that there are many ways to use where we are today with the fossil fuel industry to be able to move. And there's been some indication that some parts of the fossil fuel industry are actually willing to invest and to work and move forward with this. And I think we need to, try to, I think, galvanize that side of the energy economy and also work really hard to build these partnerships so that we are able to see the achievements that we just heard about in Mongolia and in India.
Thank you so much, Rai, again for that comment. You want to say something? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, last
Go.
point I like to make, just taking a clue from that. We have to think innovatively. Innovation is the key basically. I tell you, always we say that if you go to the solar power plant, that's okay. But just imagine for the countries where land is scarce. India also is one of that country. Land requirement for the solar based power project is close to 5 acres per megawatt. And in case of thermal power project, is less than 1 acre per megawatt. So just imagine how much more land is required. So what is being thought of in India? Now we are coming out with the solution of the floating power projects, floating solar power projects in various lakes, etc. This is another idea. I think jointly we have to share the technology innovations by all the countries and come forward that how better deployment of resources are there, better technology is implemented. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So with this comment, I think we are going to close this session. Please join me to thank you very, very much, all the speakers here and online as well. Thank you, and here on this.
Thank you.
We have, our Master of Ceremonies is here. You can announce.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for another very productive session, which is going to be remunerated by a 20 minutes networking coffee. So we look forward to seeing you back at 11:30. We deprived you of this opportunity to network yesterday, so we'd like to compensate for that today. So enjoy your coffee break, and we're looking forward to seeing you at our fourth session at 11:30. Thank you very much, and enjoy the conversation in informal format. Yeah, the coffee is served right over here on the stand.
Recording stopped.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Eğer bir adam böyle danışırsa bu
Recording in progress.
Test. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished participants, it is my pleasure to invite all of you for our session number 4, which is planning to discuss the issues of examples of climate plans for a just energy transition and sustainable climate financing in Asia-Pacific region. We have a group of high-ranking speakers for this particular session. The session will start with a presentation by Mr. Ma Dingping, which is pre-recorded, and he represents China's policy support for energy transition. And now, before we start the session, I would like to invite our distinguished speakers, Mr. Tang Men Yang, Cambodia's climate and carbon neutrality plans for sustainable energy transition, the Director of the Department for Green Economy, General Department of Policy and Strategy at the Ministry of Environment in Cambodia. Let's welcome our first speaker. A round of applause, please. We also have a company of Ms. Judith Carreras Garcia, Head of Cabinet at the Institute for a Just Transition under, she was our previous speaker online. Well, our panel discussion participants are Mr. Jose Roland Moya, Director General of Employees Confederation in Philippines. So let's invite our panel expert. A round of applause to Mr. Jose Roland Moya. We also have the pleasure of the company of the Director for Communications and Advocacy for Asia-Pacific Regional Office of International Trade Union Confederation, Ms. Joy Hernandez. A round of applause. So with this full panel of experts, I have no other option than giving the floor to Mr. Stylianos Peshmajoglu, the Manager of Subdivision at the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, who will kindly moderate this session. And with that, I give the floor to you, Mr. Peshmajoglu.
Thank you very much. And good morning, everyone. Welcome to this last event. Okay. First of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. UNFCCC and ILO have a long cooperation on issues on climate change, and I'm really happy that I am here with you today in this closing session. We are all here because all of us feel the need to take action on the ground. What we are doing here in Baku is not about just words on paper. I know there is a lot of that going on right now behind closed doors and everywhere else, but what is being agreed here in Baku and what was agreed last year in Dubai and the COPs before has to come with implementation. It cannot stay on paper. And this is going to have to be the focus over the coming years, over the coming decades, if we really want to make sure that we are able to live on this planet, us and the future generations. It's a multi-generational problem that will stay with us for a very long time. Even if we stop all our activities today, climate change will continue to happen because of the dynamics, because of the physics of the problem. But we need to take action now. And this panel, I believe, is the one that brings together policy, brings together governments with all other stakeholders, the employers, the trade unions, in order to make sure that all of us are working in the same direction. My subdivision that I am managing at the Secretariat is responsible for providing support on NDCs and also on the LT-LEDs and also looking at the impact of response measures. So we are taking a holistic kind of approach on mitigation. So to start us off, we have, I believe, a pre-recorded video from our first presenter, which is going to talk to us about China's policy support for energy transition. So the The presentation will be from Mr. Ma Dingping, Secretary General of China Chongqing Energy Research Society.
Delegation to Chongqing. Now maybe I in the airplane in the sky maybe best in Chongqing, located Chongqing. My topic is China policy support for the energy platform. I come from the Chongqing Renewable Energy is an NGO, and the senior engineer for the energy platform and energy Hawking Youth Ranger for over 13 years. Before I have worked with the NGO, I also in government. Government name is Chongqing Energy Center Conservation over 20 years. Now we have the experience for the other country because I'm the IET fellow. IET is the firmest university specials energy as environment based in Bangkok. Half time I work in the IET, half time I work in China. About China, maybe you know is the first one of the China production for the energy and West energy and youth energy. So China experience is very important for the development of housing platform. Also, China is a very famous production. This experience is very important for the developing country. Now, production is go to many country, neighbor country. I think is very important helping China do before. By the way, I introduced Chongqing at more. Chongqing, maybe you know, is the second world is the capital of China. But besides this, I tell you that Chongqing, besides the beautiful the picture for the metro through the building and other very important the production factory. We have the many production in the Chongqing. For car is the first one number in the China. Motor is the first one in the China. Chongqing is the industry city. The use of energy more is industry. Chongqing also have the more experience because the Chongqing population is similar as Bangkok, Thailand, Bangkok, and similar as Philippines, similar as Malaysia. So it has parents is very important. First, I talking about the renewable energy environment policy. I think it's very useful for the ASEAN country. Before China have the policy about build the new small power plant. This power plant use coal, but if you build the new power plant, most need build more EV and solar and wind power. But in some city and some province, the weak is energy, weak is in the solar and wind power, such as Chongqing, the sunshine time only 800. But in some districts in China, is Xinjiang and Chongqing, Yunnan maybe has over 2,000. So build the small plant can build the power plant and can build the renewable energy plant in the Xinjiang or the Yunnan. So have built many wind power and solar power. This policy is very useful for the new small power plant. Second, I think is very important for the anti-poverty policy. The anti-poverty policy is because Chongqing and China have the anti-poverty policy and funding for last 10 years and many years. The poverty funding is help the countryside to anti-poverty build many plants here. Also, I think now is ASEAN country also have a piloting program, proper funding for here. They use this policy to this country. And now we also have a pioneer innovation. But this is maybe a small part. I think maybe perfect, maybe for the Africa. Third, I think policy very useful for the green building and green factory. Green building means in the new building is need the PV roof, such as the hotel as a public building need the PV roof, or build the PV use PV. If use PV, it's very easy to get a green building label. If it didn't use, maybe it's hard. For the industry, very good topic is the green factory. If the green factory, the production is very popular for the more enterprise for the public. But how can green factory is very important. The green factory means use some solar roof or use renewable energy. So it's very useful for the green factory. Besides, we also have the many experience for the Chongqing have the more for the PV and the smart energy model. It's a PV plus. It means the PV can use more energy besides only for the electricity, also can use for the APV and more. Chongqing is the southwest, is neighboring of the, so we can go to the Bangkok is sometimes to Beijing. So we very easy for ASEAN country can go learn more about Chongqing, how to use. Second one is very important financing policy, or how financing together with for the renewable energy, for the energy green environment. I think first one is very important for the bank. The China many bank has a task package for bank for the green financing. Green financing means green financing has the use the money for the green project. This project, what is the green? China has a catalog about more detail about what the energy efficient and renewable energy. So it's a very environment go to here, go to enterprise. Second one is very important for the ESCO model. ESCO is about the company energy server conservation and share is best good example. I think in the ASEAN country maybe more petition. I know Philippine price, the Manila price, the electricity price, and Bangkok is very high. So use the ESCO model has contract more air condition and more system can do the energy progression. The third, I think, is a good example of the share battery. Share is means to the battery and the power can share. You can see this picture. This picture means many models can share by the China because this were bought by government, by the battery production, maybe motor production, auto environment by the bank or the other person. Share battery is very quickly can get return environment. So share battery maybe have a good example in the ASEAN country with share battery and more motor together for the agriculture machine. This is a convergence more. Besides, how can the new technology, new device to the end user? I think e-commerce is a good topic. E-commerce before we only know is eBay and Amazon. Now have the Amazon and Alibaba and TikTok. Many enterprise and many person is by the good job, all great job in here. We also have the experience here because Chongqing have the many foreign students get China scholarship study in Chongqing. We have together with him to do the e-commercial. He has very good English or the Russian and more language, and to use this profession is very good. For the financing policy is also China have the more climate environment and more policy, but very important for find the job, find the project. So five project is a contract with the local. How can five project we have more experience? You can do some production or company together. By the way, I also introduce the EV car. Now China having more EV car production. Also, more popular is EV car because it's too cheap. My family also have the EV car. It's very cheap than before gasoline. So together with the innovation, we have the more enterprise and popular and private company can do the environment for the green environment. I think it's very important for the technical support. Technical support means needs more technical. First one is very for China is great integration and can do and smart energy and energy storage technology can get more renewable energy for the popular and also supply more renewable energy. The other very important is UHV transmission. UHV means the super high volt supply for the other tricks and then go to the China, different Chongqing. So it's easy to gather. Chongqing is weak in solar, but Xinjiang is maybe high more position. But Xinjiang is no more need for the energy. So you can use UHV technology transport the electricity to the Chongqing. This is the most policy maybe and technology can support useful in us country. I know the law and Camellia is more small hydrogen power can use UHV technology to rely Thailand can make clean energy more use. Very important for the demand side management in China and Chongqing is have more policy. This policy I think is very useful. For the developing countries, all industry country have the more petition. I think Malaysia, Indonesia, and Vietnam, also including Thailand, have the learn more each other how can the energy efficient management. We didn't more energy waste for the energy, renewable energy. But you can to Chongqing find the more demand side manager project in industry. So it's very useful for the energy platform as an energy technology platform to other country. Last I introduce, I think share experience is very important. We have worked for a long time. We have the more experience. I think is besides the forum, we do more tests is very important. I think is Chongqing is the southwest of China. We have the more industrial experience. If you have the more delegation and more research together, we can find more experience. This year we have the invert two company, three delegation to Chongqing. After 3 days or 4 days, we together to visit some company, visit some project. We find more project. I also invite both you come to here. We have involved some NGO, some for the local company. we can contact you to real project is the best plan and what is the experience. Lots of picture I see because I'm leave the school early, so I share some gift to you. This is have the QR. QR is some catalog of the material. Thank you very much. Welcome to Chongqing. Welcome to you. Bye bye.
Thank you very much for the first presentation. Please, a round of applause. I believe this is an excellent presentation to set us off because it provides a very clear example of how international agreements translate into the national level and local level, and what it takes to make them happen. When we're talking about tripling renewable energy, doubling energy efficiency, these are the kind of actions that are needed, and you have a multi-stakeholder kind of approach where you're looking into financing, you're looking into education, you're looking into capacity building, you're looking into all elements and parts of the society coming together in order to make this happen, which is not an easy thing to do. But this provides a very good example, I believe, and food for thought. So our next speaker for today is Mr. Tang Meng-ing. I hope I pronounced it correctly, your name, who is going to talk to us about Cambodia's climate and carbon neutrality plans for sustainable energy transition. You have the floor, sir.
You ask if Indonesia is here.
Oh, okay.
Just ask if they are.
Hello.
Okay. I'm sorry, before I give you the floor, we also have a third speaker from Indonesia. It is Professor Dr. Engineer Nia Listiani Devi. I don't know if we have the third speaker with us or not. I'm just going to check if our speaker is here. No. Okay. I'm sorry. I was told the Indonesian speaker is not here. Is not here. Okay. Okay, we can proceed, sir. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Again, very good morning from Cambodia. My name is Tang Meng-ing. You can see on the screen, maybe too small. I'm the Director of Green Economy Department in the Ministry of Environment. And again, first of all, I would like to thank you, the ILO and the team as well, for inviting me to join. Of course, we have the good project implementing in Cambodia, we call PAIG, Partnership or Nation for Green Economy there. Of course, ILO is one of our partners. We have UNEP, we have UNIDO, we have UNDP, and also the UNITA. So having me here for this session, I think I would like to give a brief information what we have done in Cambodia related to the energy transition there in Cambodia. So next slide, please. Next slide, please. I think let me move on with the slides. It's coming. I think Cambodia in 2015 we successfully graduated from low income country to a lower middle income country, and we also aim to become the upper middle income by 2030, and the 2050 will be the ambitious to be developed country by then. So with this we have launched a number of policy and strategy, not only to improve our economic development, but also to on the other hand to conserve, to make sure the environment is well managed, and also to engage all the stakeholders there. Still not yet come.
Yes, I'm sorry, we're having a technical problem with the presentation.
So I can speak freely. With this, we have 5 main objectives. As one is for the we have 5 main objectives. One is for the human capital development. The second is for the economic diversification and competitiveness improvement. The third one, of course, for the private sector engagement and competitiveness increasement, and also the resilient, sustainable, inclusive growth, and also to make advancement in digital economy and society. So for Cambodia, we also submitted our national determined contribution. We aim to reduce the greenhouse gas emission by 42% in lump sum. Mainly the industry that involved is energy, the sector involved in the energy, agriculture, industry, and also waste. And the amount that we are aim to reduce is from 155 million ton per year to 90 million ton per year. So this also subject to the mobilization of the adequate financing and technology available. So I keep continue. With this, we also preparing our 0.3 NDC by 2025, and that will emphasize more on further reduce greenhouse gas emission. In the meantime, enhancing the resilience to climate impact, accelerating the implementation of climate action, and also of course to ensure the inclusivity of engagement with the group, vulnerable group like women, indigenous people, local community, and youth as well. So these are the components we are aim to develop in our NDC 3.0 in 2025. Another important commitment in the long-term strategy for carbon neutrality in 2050. I think in 2021, Cambodia is the first country in Southeast Asia who submitted this carbon neutrality ambition. So this ambition, we try to set a clear target by 2050 in balancing the emission reduction, also in the meantime to further develop the inclusive economic growth and climate resilient. And the sector we are focusing is R5. First is agriculture, energy, forestry, and land use, industry, of course, and the last one is the waste management. So these are the 5 important sectors that Cambodia is looking at. Again, not yet. So I can keep speak freely. For the energy sector in Cambodia, I think by mid 2022, we are proudly to provide 98.27%, almost 100% to all the village in Cambodia. Even though it's quite a small country there in the Southeast Asia, but we quite ahead of the set target. We originally aim to provide 100% to all the village electrification there, but up to 2022 we already achieved 98% already. So this is the important achievement that we made so far. But within that, we can see that the hydropower. So in 2022, we can see that hydropower was one of the dominant source of renewable energy, contributing around 53% of the energy mix, the total energy mix there. While the other we import from the neighbor country like Laos, Vietnam, and Thailand. And one important composition as well from the solar energy is up to 6.7% already. And the combination of the traditional coal and oil is around 38%. So this is the status of Cambodia energy mix in 2022. So with that, we set out the power development plan in 2022 itself. We set up to 2024. We aim to increase the share of solar energy in the total energy mix from 6.7% to 12% in 2030 and to 19% in 2040. So it's quite ambitious that we try to increase the renewable energy, especially in solar, to up to 19% in 2040 itself. And with that as well, we also launched the what we call National Energy Efficiency Policy, which also consider as one of the a key driven factor to reduce our greenhouse gas emission there. So we set the target that in 2030, some of the area that we can see here, we set up to 19% saving from the energy efficiency. So the sector from the industrial sector, resident sector, and also the other manufacturing sector as well. So in total, 19% will be achieved by the energy efficiency policy implementation. So with the slide that I mentioned here, that actually by 2030 we aim to increase the renewable energy mix up to 70%. But as of today, 2024, we achieving 62% already, so it's quite ahead of the set target already. So maybe by 2022 we hope to increase even beyond the original set 70%. So hydropower will be the one, solar energy, wind, also one of the key important project will be implemented in Cambodia. So since Cambodia we transit from the former Prime Minister Hun Sen, we cancel what we call the 700 coal power plant in Cambodia, but replaced with a new LNG 900 megawatt. So this one is still under construction in Cambodia. So we cancel the 700 megawatt on the coal, what we replaced with LNG one. And by 2029, we are also having in the plan another total 23 new project in power electricity plant, with most of them are clean energy, up to 3,950 megawatt. So these are another important key project that we are going to achieve in 2029 itself. So I think I would like to give this brief transition that Cambodia is going on in order to achieve our 2030 agenda and also 2050 vision to become one of the carbon neutrality nation. Although we are not a high emitted country, but we are quite vulnerable to climate change as well. I thank you. So,
thank you very much. I understand that you have another commitments, but before you go, if you don't mind, if you can be with us for a few minutes, I would like first of all to thank you for your presentation. This is another excellent example of what it takes to go from paper into action. And in your presentation, you mentioned about all these plans that you have to go to 70% increase the renewable energy. What are some of the key challenges that you had? What are the barriers that you have? And how do you plan to go about them to make sure that all of those plans not stay on paper, but become action on the ground?
Actually, the policy that I presented here, actually not exactly on paper, it's already achieved so far. Like what I mentioned, the plan to have 70% of renewable energy in the energy mix. Now we achieved 62% already by 2030, but now 2024 we achieve almost nearly 90%. And the challenge that I would say in Cambodia is that we are still lacking of kind of financial mechanism to ensure more attraction of the private sector to join. Of course, we see the commitment from the government to close down all the new or those conventional like coal power plant in Cambodia. We try to close down and to reduce the number who are existing. But we see the challenge that we still need to engage more involvement from the private sector to join, because if we could not provide enough incentive, I mean, for the private sector to join in this important energy sector, there will be a lack of successful story to be happen in the future. Let's say we try to close down the coal power plant, but we need to provide more like opportunity, like tech incentive, those kind of attractive factor for the private sector to join for solar farm, solar plant project, wind as well. Those are the important potential area that the private sector can join there. But we as a government, we always try to engage with those challenges. We go out to speak with the private sector that, hey, you guys still have the opportunity to invest in this area. Like, for example, we provided the concessional land for those who are willing to invest in solar farm, because those will need a huge amount of land to be developed. So this kind of example that we are facing, we also try to solve as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for this. And if you don't mind, one more question in relation to energy consumption, because you mentioned there is also the intent to reduce energy consumption. What are again the key barriers there? Because it's one of the maybe more complicated areas to work. When you are looking at the energy production, it may be easier compared to energy consumption, which comes into what all of us are doing on a day-to-day basis. Any experience that you would like to share with us? Anything that you would like to, other countries maybe to use it as, best practices, if you like, of how we can do that?
Of course, I agree with you that it's difficult to reduce energy consumption while we keep the same kind of level of productivity. For one example, in Cambodia, we are the major, in our own economic development for the textile industry. So there we work with the private sector in the area, the textile sector, to focus more on energy efficiency. Let's say they are using the conventional lighting, all those conventional electricity from coal and the other source. So by replacing the conventional one to more technological advancement, they can save the energy consumption from that, but still keep the same productivity that they can produce. Yeah, we work with some of the partners like European Union, Global Green Growth Institute from Korea as well, to provide a kind of testing that to showcase that the government factory, they can join in this area to save their energy consumption, but still they keep the same level of productivity, even more sometimes. But the consumption side is reducing, but they require to invest in prior. The amount of let's say we change from the conventional lamp to LED one, we need to invest in prior. But for the long term, medium and long term kind of planning, they can get a benefit from that. This is one of the examples we can say. Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, and thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. Okay, now we are going to move to our next segment, where we have a panel discussion with our two distinguished speakers. We have Mr. Jose Roland Moya, Director General of Employers Confederation of the Philippines. And Mr. Moya, we had two presentations, one from China and one from Cambodia. they're all looking at different challenges in relation to just transition into energy, into looking how we can transform the economies and how we can make sure that we are moving into a green future. I would like to hear your reactions on what we heard today, and also to give us your perspectives from your own experience from the employer side.
Yeah, thank you very much. I come from an organization called the Employers Confederation of the Philippines, which is a member of the International Organization of Employers. We are also a constituent of the ILO based on the principle of tripartism. I noted that China is heavily investing in the Philippines in terms of energy and power, and I can confirm that. The situation of Cambodia is quite akin to the Philippines. Electrification remains a main stumbling block because, but our government is aspiring that by 2018 we should have a 100% electrification of the whole country. Let me just give you an idea about the energy mix in the Philippines, which is a combination, of course, of renewable and non-renewable energy sources. But the country relies heavily on fossil fuels, but as mentioned earlier, we have been actively investing in renewable energy to ensure energy security and sustainability. Talking about the energy mix, I'm referring to fossil fuel, and that means coal, oil, natural gas. We are heavily dependent on coal. About 50% the dominant source of electricity in the Philippines is coal, contributing about 43 to 50%. If you are dependent on coal, which is imported, then you are subjected to the price fluctuations in the global market, and that has made the country's electricity one of the highest in Asia. In terms of renewable energy, it contributes about 30% right now. And it is heartening to note that the Philippine government, there are significant developments that I would like to briefly discuss in this session. The first one is that in his State of the Nation address this year, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. Said that the government is opening up projects specifically on renewable energy to foreign investments. It used to be that the ownership structure should be 60% in favor of Filipinos and 40% in favor of foreigners. Now, that has completely changed because ownership can now be 100% foreign. And the government is taking a more aggressive stance to increase renewable energy in the country. The second point is I'd like to emphasize that the centerpiece of the country's environmental adaptation consists of number one, decarbonization, number two, climate adaptation, and number three, disaster response. Before I came to this session, I perused over two documents, which is the nationally determined contribution of the Philippines and the Just Transition Roadmap. Both documents recognize the private sector as the engine of economic growth. and they also recognize the important role of the private sector in ensuring sustainable development. But in the development of these two documents, there was hardly any consultation with both organized employers. I'm referring to the Employers Confederation of the Philippines and our counterpart in the trade union movement. And that is what I would like to bring into the table today. When we discuss about power, electricity, renewable energies, the discussions focus mostly on investment, on financing, on productivity and innovation, and also the tax, the tax component. But one thing that is missed in the conversation and discussion is the labor and social dimension, which is at the very core of the mandates of employers and business membership organizations, and of course our counterpart in the trade union movement. And by the labor and social policy dimension, I'm referring to gender, to social protection, to skills development, and also to social justice. So I think this labor and social dimension should figure prominently when the NDCs of the country are updated by 2025, and we hope that both employers and the trade unions will be given a front seat in the table. I would just like to say again that business and labor has a key role to play since they are the main engines of growth and socio-economic development, decent job creation, and depend on the productive and robust labor market to operate the various economic activities. In this context, employers and workers through trade unions have a central role to play in addressing critical tasks related to the national response to the climate emergency, such as transforming industries and businesses to be aligned with our vision of a sustainable economy less reliant on dirty energy and yet creating decent work for all. There is promoting a just transition is a crucial enabler of sustainable development and climate ambition and needs to be placed at the center of climate action. Just transition involves maximizing the social and economic opportunities of climate and environmental action, including an enabling environment for sustainable enterprises and decent work, while minimizing and carefully managing challenges. The complexity of a just transition towards environmentally sustainable economies and societies for all is also compounded by the implications of technological change and demographic shifts. Furthermore, the industry and at the industry and enterprise levels, employers and workers should be able to decide how greening can be done at each level, and special attention should be given to two major climate change responses identified by UN Environmental Program and that is mitigation and adaptation. Just transition does not happen in an instance. For just transition to work, it requires investment in resources, time, and commitment from all social partners. Haphazardly done, climate change programs can become unjust and can cause social and economic conflicts. Lastly, I would like to talk about very briefly about the the bipartite Just Transition Program, signed between the Employers Confederation of the Philippines and one of the largest trade unions in our country, which is the Federation of Free Workers. We identified several programs and actions on the ground that we feel we can jointly implement. Number one is the formation of a national bipartite Just Transition Committee and the encouragement of the establishment of industry and enterprise level Just Transition Committees. Second is our call for genuine representation of employers and workers in any and all just transition structures and mechanisms organized by government. And then the third one is engagement with appropriate government agencies and institutions relating to national policies, laws and programs on just transitions, the country's NDCs under the Paris Agreement. And it is heartening to note that COP29 has given us the opportunity to engage more closely with the agencies in our country which are engaged or involved in climate change, and I'm referring to the Department of Environment and Natural Resources and the Climate Change Commission. We have engagement, of course, with these agencies, but I should say in a superficial basis. We get invited to their conferences, to their events. We have speaking roles. We also invite them to our events, but we never have had a more formalized and, let us say, structured relationship, which is what we will be working on henceforth. The last one is the promotion and the conduct of awareness-raising activities, because awareness about renewables, about climate change is still relatively low, especially among micro and small enterprises. We need to provide more opportunities, especially to micro and small enterprises, to be aware of the impact of climate change to their operations. We would also like to intensify research, partnerships, capacity building, training, and deliver, in the case of ECOP, more direct services on greening and just transition. And we are already doing that with assistance from our partners in the Netherlands and Denmark. That should end my intervention, and I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moya. Thank you. It was a really very fascinating intervention, and I really appreciate all the points that you make, because this is what it takes when we're talking about just transition. You touched upon a number of different elements, and this is a very excellent segue for our next speaker. And of course, employers need to have employees, and this is where we bring into our discussion Ms. Joy Hernandez, Director for Communications and Advocacy, Asia Pacific Regional Office from the International Trade Union Confederation. Joy, the floor is yours. We'd like to hear your views about what we heard from the two presentations and also from Mr. Moya. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to share my insights about the earlier presentations. So as Roland said, within the tripartite structure, we have the employers, we have the government, and the third sector there is the trade unions. And when we talk about just transition, the concept actually started and originated from the trade union movement. It started from the trade union movement because of concerns of job losses during the process of transitioning. Now, we have heard presentations earlier. When we talk about just energy transition, most of the presentations that we heard are all about energy. We've never heard anything about the just part of it. And I think that's very important because I don't think that all types of green transitions are just. Just comes from justice. And I think the justice elements should be there when we are talking about the transitions to a low carbon economy. And when I talk about justice elements, we mean labor rights. When we talk about labor rights, we mean freedom of association and collective bargaining. We mean social protection. We mean workers being paid with living wages. Workers enjoying occupational health and safety, especially also in the midst of the climate change impacts that they are experiencing. And also skills development, including retraining and reskilling. We have heard earlier about initiatives about decommissioning power plants and how the commissioning of power plants, the approach is about getting more private sector to take part in the decommissioning. But we've never heard about what happens to the workers during the decommissioning process. When a power plant gets decommissioned, workers in that power plant will definitely lose their jobs. And what we want in a just transition process is that these workers should have either social protection to protect them from the job losses or loss of income, new jobs in a cleaner or renewable energy sector, or in other energy that is also climate friendly, or they could also undergo when we're talking about transitions. And Roland already mentioned about the importance of meaningful social dialogue when we are doing just transition planning. However, in Asia Pacific, social dialogue is also under attack. Many countries don't have constructive social dialogue mechanisms, particularly in areas of energy and climate, so that social partners, including the employers and the trade unions, could take part and really put forward our recommendations on how a transition could be planned and could happen. For example, in the case of the development of the nationally determined contributions, in Southeast Asia, only 2 countries, if I'm not mistaken, I have to double check all the NDCs again, but if I'm not mistaken, only 2 countries in Southeast Asia have the just transition language in them. One of which is Indonesia, and Indonesia has a more elaborate description of what just transition of the workforce is. And another one is the Philippines, which just mentioned just transition and green jobs creation. But then, I think for justice to happen, we also have to be part of the conversation. A language doesn't mean that we're part of the conversation. In the last NDC of the Philippines, for example, we were not part of it. In the current updating, we have not yet invited, right? So we hope that we will be part of it. In many countries, in some countries, for example, when they develop NDCs, we as trade unions want a seat at the table. But even Ministry of Labor, Labor, Employment, or Social Security is not even part of the high-level steering committee of the development and implementation of NDCs. So if the Ministry of Labor itself is not there, how can we even assert a seat at the table as trade unions, as employers? I think we have to understand that just transition, when we also look at the ILO guidelines for a just transition, one important principle there is policy coherence and having a coordinated approach in a just transition. This means involving all of the government, but at the same time, all of the social partners and other stakeholders that will be affected in the process of the transition. I will also want to touch very quickly on the issue of financing. When we talk about financing for just transition, we want the financing also to be just. And so in our opinion, as trade unions, financing for just transition should also not be debt creating, particularly for developing countries. We heard from Cambodia, and we know that Cambodia is not really among the countries that have high greenhouse gas emissions. And yet we have been pushing Cambodia to really, reduce their greenhouse gas emissions through the NDCs. But at the end of the day, their emissions are very much lower. When we talk about, for example, the main industry in Cambodia, textiles, that they push for energy efficiency. But when we look at the situation of workers, most of them are not even paid living wages. Women sometimes get terminated when they get pregnant. They don't have security of tenure, or what we call job security, because most of the jobs are outsourced, contractual, or not permanent. And so I think we have to rethink the overall approach here. We cannot target only the energy dimension of the transition. We have to look at the labor and social dimensions, as Roland said earlier. Because again, at the end of the day, it's really about the people. When the trade union movement developed the concept of the just transition, it's not about investments to renewable energy. It's about the people. It's about leaving no one behind. And that's my main message here. Ensure that no one is left behind by ensuring rights, by ensuring co-creation of just transition policies with employers and with trade unions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I couldn't agree with you more. Absolutely. On the NDC side and on the implementation and development side, both, we need to have employers, we need to have employees, trade unions, we need to have everybody on the table. And this is one of the biggest challenges that all countries face when they want to take this holistic kind of approach, whole of government, whole of society kind of approach. In your view, what would be the strategy that can be employed in order to convince governments to move into that direction? Because what we see right now is that there is sometimes a top-down kind of approach where decision is being taken by the government without a lot of consultation. If you were to pitch to governments, what kind of strategies would you use for your involvement?
Well, I already emphasized earlier that the role of the private sector is recognized in the NDC as well as in the Just Transition Roadmap in the Philippines. It's just that it's just written in these documents, but there is no actual work being done on the ground to ensure the implementation of this commitment. First, as employers and business membership organizations, specifically in the Philippines, our leadership, maintains contacts with these departments or with these ministries at the highest level. We get invited to their fora, to their conferences, to their programs, and we also invite them to our events. So this is a good starting point to open up a discussion, a conversation on how to ensure that employers are given a seat on the table and our insights and our ideas are considered on a substantive basis. Second, I think there has to be a policy put in place by the national government, probably with the issuance of an executive order, not coming from the Department of Environment and Natural Resources because it will have lesser teeth, but a policy issuance coming from the highest official of the land will probably ensure the participation, engagement, and partnership of employers and workers. And that happened when the Philippines, as you know, has been in the list of the Committee on Application of Standards. And with pressure coming from both workers and employers, the dialogue with Malacanang, with the executive branch of the government, has commenced. And we have, there was an interagency committee created for the purpose of resolving issues related to, for example, extrajudicial killings, violations on freedom of association and collective bargaining. But the interagency committee does not include workers and employers, quite strangely, even if the issues that they discuss are affect both employers and workers. But I can understand it because it's an interagency committee of the various of government agencies involved in the investigation, prosecution, and bringing justice to victims of violations of freedom of association, harassment, violence, etc. But now there will be regular dialogues conducted at the highest level of the executive branch and trade unions and workers together with the Department of Labor and Employment. This is a good approach. There has to be a policy in place through an issuance coming from probably the office of the president.
Thank you. So we need political intervention. We need to make sure that at the highest level of government there is the recognition and the realization of the importance of the involvement. From your side.
Maybe I'll start first with, because the question is how to pitch. But what's important, I think, is if we're going to look at the experience, for example, in the Philippines, I think the employers and the trade unions also play a big role in terms of being proactive in approaching the government, in ensuring that they are part of the process. Because as I said, even the government sometimes doesn't know that we have to be part of it. Even though, you know, at the heart of the just transition should be the social partners co-developing just transition plans. But how to pitch? And, you know, as you mentioned, most of the measures that are happening are very top-down. I think how to pitch is to ensure or to show and demonstrate what happens on the ground, what kinds of solutions work. I was also in the same pavilion, I think yesterday or a couple of days ago, and we talked about social protection. And I shared some examples of good practices of trade unions that are pushing for social protection in the context of the climate crisis. For example, our affiliate in India, the Self-Employed Women's Association, introduced a heat wave insurance for their members. So if the temperature rose to a certain degrees for 3 consecutive days, the members of SEWA would be entitled to a certain amount of insurance. And that's unconditional. The only condition is the temperature rise. And if the temperature continues to increase on the fourth consecutive day, they would be entitled to an additional amount. And this amount, even though it is small, it is something that home-based workers, informal workers who are working under the heat of the sun, kite workers in India, it's something that could really augment their income, especially if they couldn't do work in the middle of the heat. You know, these are examples which are very important because workers and their trade unions are in the front lines of the climate crisis. They know exactly, you know, the challenges that they face when we're talking about the impacts of the climate change. In Sri Lanka, for example, the trade union of tea plantation workers were able to bargain for stronger occupational health and safety provisions, including medical checkup, including support for evacuations during times of landslides. These might be very granular examples, but these examples show that we, being in the front lines, know the specific challenges that workers face in specific sectors as well. When we talk about bipartite, for example, there's a report conducted by the ILO before during the time of during the pandemic, which shows how social dialogue was able to produce positive outcomes when it comes to solutions related to responding to the COVID-19 pandemic. And I think that's a mechanism, a technology that we already have, a tool that we already have within the ILO, among the social partners. And I think we have to maximize that in a constructive way to show that, you know, dialogue and really working towards solutions together collaboratively for a just transition could happen.
Thank you very much for your answer, both of you. So we need to be proactive. We need to make sure that we learn from the past. There are things that we have done before and we can, but of course at different scale, that we have to employ in the future. Before we go into our forum discussion, I believe there is someone from online, Freddy Guayacan. Am I pronouncing this correctly? Okay, so Freddy is online, and please, Freddy, you have the floor. You would like to make an intervention. I can hear you from...
Yes, well, first of all, to thank Mr. Moya and also Mrs. Hernandez for the intervention and for sending the very loud message of the need to include workers' organizations and employers' organizations in the design of the NDCs, but not only in the design of that type of policy, but also in all the other policies such as national development plans, as well as the national employment policies and other related policies that include the just transition aspect. Allow me also to congratulate the ICO as well as the Federation of Free Workers in the Philippines for this milestone, this joint transition program, which has been agreed between both the employers and the workers in the context of the Philippines. I also would like to echo the message from Mr. Moya in relation to the fact that many of the discussions that are being carried out at the moment, usually in the context of the NDCs, usually focus on productivity, financing, taxation, and very often they overlook the labor and the social dimension, and so aspects related to gender, social protection, occupational safety and health, as well as skills and reskilling of workers, and of course of social justice. I think this is a very important point that I would like to also echo. And then with the strategy to follow, to include the workers' organizations as well as employers' organizations in the discussions and in general in the design, but also in the implementation of the NDCs. I think it came very strong the message to have a more systematic consultations that involve the workers and the employers. As Mrs. Hernandez mentioned it, indeed it is necessary in the first place that the ministries of labor are invited to this type of consultations and discussions. Also very important, the point made by Mrs. Hernandez on the need to showcase more examples of what is happening to workers, what is happening on the ground. I think how the heat wave is affecting, for instance, workers in the agriculture, workers in the construction sector, also how the platform workers are affected by the outdoor weather and the heat waves. I think it is important that these examples and these cases are showcased to the policymakers for them to realize the need to include both the workers' organizations, but also the employers in the, as I said, in the design, but also in the implementation of the NDCs and other related policy frameworks to the just transition. I think finally, just to conclude, it is very, very loud, the message, and very clear from workers and employers to us, to the International Labour Organization, to continue supporting our tripartite constituents. And as it was mentioned, indeed, by both the speakers, in areas such as research, the development of more knowledge, but also capacity building and training. And as it was mentioned also by Mr. Moya, on the need to have more advocacy on the topic. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Freddie, for this intervention. And Freddie is the Senior Specialist Environment and Decent Work at ILO Regional Office, Asia Pacific, speaking from Bangkok. So with that, I would like to open the floor. If there are any questions, any further interventions from our audience, if any one of you would like to say something, ask something to our speakers, the floor is yours. I don't see any questions or any request for an intervention. With that, I would like to thank you both. It has been fascinating to listen to both of you, listen to your different perspectives. There's a lot of commonality, a lot of things brings us together, and not many keeps us apart. So once again, thank you. A big round of applause, please, for our two members of the panel. With that, I would close this session, and I will pass the floor back to our Master of Ceremonies. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much. Once again, a round of applause to our participants, and special round of appreciation and applause to our wonderful moderator, Mr. Stylianos Peshmajoglou, the manager of Mitigation Subdivision at the United Nations Framework Convention of Climate Change, for a very nice and professional moderation. And ladies and gentlemen, sad as it is, it brings us to our closing remarks, which are going to be provided by both the host country's representative. And before we give the floor to Mr. Anar Kerimov, the Deputy Minister of Labor and Social Protection of Population in Azerbaijan, we have two closing remarks to be provided online. So our first speaker will be Ms. Xiaoyan Qian, Director of ILO Decent Work Technical Support Team for East and Southeast Asia and the Pacific, and Country Office for Thailand, Cambodia, and Lao People's Democratic Republic. So the floor is now given to Ms. Xiaoyan Qian. Thank you. We're all ears.
Distinguished Mr. Anar Karimov, Deputy Minister of Labor and Social Protection of Population of Azerbaijan, Mr. Bernard Krab, Team Leader for Environment and Circular Economy at the European Commission, representatives of the Partnership on Action for Green Economy, representatives from ITUC, IOE, UNFCCC, distinguished guests and colleagues. Greetings from Bangkok. On behalf of the ILO Decent Work Technical Support Team for East and Southeast Asia and the Pacific, I extend my gratitude to the organizers and our UN sister agencies for convening this highly significant and timely policy dialogue. The organization of this policy dialogue is very timely, as countries are currently engaged in the process of discussing and strengthening their nationally determined contributions, NDCs. Under the Paris Agreement, we're all very familiar with this NDC. Just now we have that two representatives from both employers and unions. They all emphasize this. During the NDC, we also need to get our voice heard. So in this context, the ILO remains ready to provide technical support to our constituents and partners, enabling them to actively participate in shaping these policy commitments. Such a dialogue ensures that the voice of workers and employers' organizations are heard, enhances the alignment of NDC actions with on-the-ground needs, and established a foundation for broad-based consensus on climate actions. The upcoming round of NDCs presents a critical opportunity to enhance the use of such a dialogue and ensure inclusive engagement with stakeholders, particularly focused on those most vulnerable and most affected by climate change and climate actions. And I fully agree what we have emphasized just now, that this just transition should focus on that the people, no one left behind. Through the South-South and Triangle cooperation approach, this policy dialogue has enabled mutual learning and collaboration among countries facing similar challenges and opportunities, allowing participants to share and gain valuable insights from one another's experience. We greatly value platforms like this, cross-regional policy dialogue, bringing experience and knowledge from different sub-regions. These spaces encourage discussions on leveraging solutions to support green jobs, sustainable enterprises development, and circular approaches. Such efforts are vital for realizing a just transition and creating decent work for all. Let us not forget that just transition policies and strategies must consider the significant gender dimension of environmental challenges and opportunities. Women are among the most affected by the impacts of climate change, particularly in sectors such as agriculture, manufacturing, and the informal economy, which account for the majority of the economies in many middle-income countries in the Asia-Pacific region. Despite progress toward gender equality over the past century, women continue to face exclusion, discrimination, and increased socioeconomic vulnerabilities. Climate change exacerbates these inequalities, especially in the world of work. To ensure that women can access and benefit from new jobs and income opportunities associated with the transition, deliberate gender-responsive and inclusive measures must be explicitly incorporated into climate policies, just transition strategies, and in the NDCs. This COP2019 high-level policy dialogue has offered a valuable platform for exchange those ideas and insights on how to address the challenges in the world of work arising from climate change and the policies implemented to respond to it. As this dialogue concludes, let us reaffirm our commitment to collaborative efforts and strive for policy coherence in advancing meaningful actions toward a just transition and decent work, with a particular emphasis on supporting the most vulnerable. We will continue working together toward inclusive and sustainable outcomes. And I also want to congratulate for all of you to organize this successful dialogue. And thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Ms. Qiaoyan Qian. Thank you for your very insightful closing remarks. And now we would like to give the floor to Mr. Bernard Krabbe, Team Leader for Environment and Circular Economy at the European Commission Directorate General for International Partnerships. So the floor is given to Mr. Bernard Krabbe.
Thank you, Mr. Facilitator. I hope you can hear me.
We hear you perfectly well, yeah, as if you're with us.
All right, great. Unfortunately, I can't be with you, but it's a pleasure to address you online. And honorable speakers, Ms. Xiaoyan Qian, Director of ILO, Honorable Anar Karimov, Deputy Minister of Labor and Social Protection of Population in Azerbaijan, ladies and gentlemen, as I said, it's a pleasure for me to join this closing session and deliver a few remarks on behalf of the board members of the UN Partnership of Action on Green Economy. And I would like to thank ILO and the other page implementing agency for organizing this important cross-regional South-South policy dialogue. As we speak, the COP29 negotiations are entering their final phase. You are well placed to know it. You are close to the scene. The current nationally determined contributions indicate that the world is on course for catastrophic climate change and a global temperature rise of close to 2.6 to 2.8 degrees. The latest floods in Spain, close to us in Europe, like in Africa, like in Asia, like in America, clearly demonstrate that once again that climate change will hit everybody everywhere indiscriminately. But it shows as well that the poor and most vulnerable populations are the hardest hit. They are by far the most exposed, the least able to cope, and the least able to recover after the storm. We have ample evidence of this. And this is only the beginning of changes that could quickly get out of control of humankind, unless we act boldly and urgently. As we know it well, and the negotiations are focusing on this, first we need to urgently transition out of fossil fuels and promote energy efficiency and renewable energy. However, as important as this is, clean energy investments alone are not sufficient to mitigate climate change. Delivering on the NDCs and the stated net zero ambitions requires deep reduction of greenhouse gas emissions across all economic sectors and systems. That's one of the reasons why PAGE and this concept of green economy is so important. Countries need to significantly accelerate and scale up the implementation of their wide portfolio of mitigation measures. And thankfully, there are ways to complement energy investment and reverse the global climate change. We also need to transition to economies that are more sober and efficient in the way we use natural resources. As science suggests, a circular economy transition offers a systemic and cost-effective response to global climate change. Circular strategies significantly cut emissions by reducing the use of virgin raw materials and by decreasing the amount of energy required. Conversely, the circular economy discussion remains to be seen in policy negotiation rooms. Circular economy concepts are largely absent from NDCs. And the circular economy has been far from being a mainstream policy at COP29 talks. We need to strengthen our NDCs ahead of next year's COP, and we need to integrate circular economy in these NDCs. Esteemed participants, I would also say and like to say and share with you that Europe has today, and that's a new European Commission under the leadership of Ursula von der Leyen, the Parliament endorsed the proposal of Commission. Our President von der Leyen has made clear that Europe will stay the course on its Green Deal agenda and on its climate objectives. As you may know, the Green Deal is the EU's sustainable growth strategy. So it's not only a climate neutrality agenda, it's a sustainable growth strategy, first and foremost, based on the firm belief that a green economy and a green transition are the economies of the future. And the circular economy is a cornerstone of the European Green Deal, and it's part of our pathway to climate neutrality in 2050. Over the last 5 years, in Europe, we have implemented more than 30 policy and regulatory measures to transform the European economy. We act in Europe, but we act as well beyond Europe. And beyond Europe, we are committed to support the global transition as part of our commitment to deliver on our commitments on climate finance. So we are working with partners around the world, and we are pleased to see a growing number of countries and regions embracing the circular economy agenda in the world. We know that we have a lot to learn as well from our partners in the global south. In many respects, the economies of your countries are more circular and more sustainable than ours. So we believe your countries have a unique opportunity to leapfrog to truly clean and sustainable development pathways. Studies also show that these pathways create investment opportunities and jobs and contribute to more resilient and secure economies able to face external shocks, like we had the COVID pandemics, obviously, but also increasingly the shocks generated by climate change. Over the last 4 years, the EU has committed close to 2 billion euros in more than 60 countries to support the development of green and circular economies. We are supporting partner countries to develop policy and regulatory measures. We are supporting green business development in partner countries, workforce training and reskilling, and investments. We support initiatives like the EU co-funded Partnership for Action on Green Economy. That's an excellent example and one of our flagship programs to support the green economy transition. As the discussion of the last 2 days obviously have highlighted, people need to be at the heart of our effort. And this is all about people. We are not only supporting green economies, but inclusive economies that create jobs and leave no one behind. So the topic of today and of yesterday is of paramount importance, the question of a just transition. We in the EU are committed to support a just and inclusive future of living well within planetary boundaries. We have learned through the years that sustainability and social justice must go hand in hand, and that the success of the green transition largely depends on broad societal consensus. There will simply be no green transition if we do not ensure social justice. We have also learned that this is not an easy task, and I think the discussion of the last 2 days have illustrated that. Often, economic mechanisms created in good faith produce unintended effects and contribute to deepen inequalities instead of reducing them. We know that large-scale systemic change involves trade-offs. It creates winners and losers and may trigger unintended outcomes that disproportionately affect vulnerable territories and social groups. So we need to ensure that the low carbon transition is a just transition. And we know that this is not an easy pathway. We know that, and largely we know that the green transition is a process of learning by doing. And that's why it's so important to learn from each other on our respective experience. This is precisely why the dialogue you have had in the last 2 days is so essential. As I said, the green transition is a learning by doing process. So I hope and I trust that this dialogue organized by ILO and Page with the support of the EU in the last 2 days has contributed to this collective learning that we need to embrace. So I very much thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Krabbe, for a very human-oriented sum up of our efforts for these 2 days. And last but not least, I would like to give the floor for closing remarks to the representative of the country and the ministry that tried their best to make both COP29 in general and our 2 days event a true success. So with that, let's give a round of applause to Mr. Anar Kerimov, Deputy Minister of Labor and Social Protection of Population of the Republic of Azerbaijan.
Ladies and gentlemen, I know it's not easy to stand between you and lunch, but still I will do my best. We talk a lot about just transitions this day, and it's a great privilege to see you all in this discussion. And first of all, I would like to thank Christina and excellent ILO team for their efforts for organizing this very productive platform where such various stakeholders express their views. And I would like also to thank Stelios for facilitating this session, and particularly Master of Ceremony Fuad Bey. It has been a while I haven't seen him, but I see he's again in great shape. So we talked about just transition for these 2 days. During the first day, I'm very happy to see that we managed to cover and to make the values, and we hear different cases, and this platform also catalyzed many different perspectives. But I'm happy to see that despite the distances, I see that the problems, the challenges are pretty much similar. So despite our achievements, I see there is still a long way. We still need to pay attention that this process is just, is inclusive, is social oriented. And yesterday we talked a lot about employment, green jobs, opportunities. And today, particularly focus that all these values, if we put them in transition, we need more action. And if we need more action, still we need investments, we need sustainable financing, we need more commitment from stakeholders, and particularly during these 2 days, we hear a lot from governments, from delegates, from international organizations, and particularly today I'm happy to see very vivid examples and ideas as from employees organization and also from employers, and that makes this platform again as added value to general, because the general motto for these 2 days were coming from vision into practice, coming from transition into action. So with this, I believe that ILO already and other UN agencies like UNAC, UNFCCC, and others already formulated an excellent document which is called Just Transition Guidelines. This is very comprehensive document. I believe most of us who haven't still had the chance to look at it can refer to these documents that provides a very good principle and guidelines how we can make these 5 pillars into the action, and this is very important. And then we have to look not only into the, I would say, general documents, but we need also to look into this tripartite mechanism like government, employers, employees. We also have to look into the ILO conventions, like we have a social dialogue convention, because one of the important pillars is also to make this transition socially inclusive based on the dialogue. So basically, we need to move forward, and the standards are very important. Just 2 weeks ago, we were witnessing in Azerbaijan, and we launched a very good initiative, which is called ECG standards, which comprises environment, social dialogue, and corporate governance matter. And the standard itself already hints us where all this transition, where this process is moving. So it's not only environment, but now we have to link it very closely with the social matters. We need to also corporate governance. And when we talk about corporate governance, of course, this puts a lot of responsibility, not only bureaucrats as I am representing, but also on the employer side. And of course, as one of the latest presentation, Ms. Hernandez, she pointed out that we have to put a lot also on the interests of the workers, interests of the employees, because all these interests, they represent a huge share of society that our employees are represented. So once again, I extend my gratitude to ILO because they managed to bring with people, with a stakeholder, with such diverse priorities, but still this is a platform where we come together, we raise our awareness, we again resetting our priorities for next year, and I believe with this energy, with this action, we'll be able to deliver all these achievements until the Brazil, until the next COP. And once again, hope to see you in the next months in Azerbaijan, in the region, and hope to see you in Brazil. Thank you.